So here with me today is um, a former TA, a former student, uh, probably one of the most articulate human beings I've ever encountered. She's very intentional with her words. I know she's listening, um, which when I first had her in class, sort of made me nervous, so I didn't know how to read her. But she has come through for me on so many different levels, and I know she has so much insight. And I just want to bless the world with her thoughts and her experiences. We have Siyona. Siyona, the requirement for being on the show is having a favorite shirt or sweater. What do you have on, and what can you tell us about it?
So I have this green and navy blue striped sweater. I know it's kind of boring, but I have a fondness for like academic looking sweaters because I used to steal sweaters from my dad's closet, and he would always have sweaters like this because that man went to so many years of school. My dad has a PhD. He will literally tell anyone who will listen that he does. So I think that's why I love these like academic looking collegiate sweaters. So that's why I'm wearing this.
And that's not cap because I remember during graduation, your dad stopped me. He's like, "Mr. Reese," and,
Oh, did he?
yeah,
I didn't know
yeah,
about that.
and he was talking of a story. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome," but I got to get back to work.
Right, right, right. Yeah, my dad's a
Awesome,
talker. I think I probably get it from him, from both my parents. Both my parents are very talkative, so.
awesome. You are amazing at a number of things. Um, what are some of your passions, and how'd you get there?
Passions. Okay, I think I have a huge passion for like reading and words in general. You were
Mm,
talking about me being articulate. I really appreciate that. Because I love reading, and I think that's one of the reasons why I felt so great in your class is because like I love I love reading, and I felt like you were a teacher who also loves reading. I mean, I think it's a requirement for English teachers to, know things about books, but I felt like you actually really enjoyed reading and
mm,
talking about books. So that's definitely a passion of mine. And then just in general, I think I have a passion for like what's going on in the world, and um just knowing where I stand on world issues.
mm.
I like to be in the know about everything happening.
So right now you are at UC Davis. Um,
I am.
uh, Currently, please tell us your major and what made you decide to go into that field.
So my major is political science, kind of goes with what I was just talking
Mm,
about. I'm interested in what's going on with the government, policy, legislation, but it's because I'm pre-law. I think that's the main reason that I chose that major,
mm,
because I think that, the legal field is kind of the track for me. And it has been I think I've wanted to be that for a really long time, maybe since like middle school, or like late elementary school. I wanted to be an attorney.
mm.
So, um, I don't really think that there was any other
No,
option about
no
what I
other
was
pathway.
major.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So, was there any moment, either in your childhood, middle school, or high school, like a big pivotal moment that put you onto the path that you're on right now? Was there an aha moment where, like,
I feel like in like freshman year of high school, I think I always kind of knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, and also
mm,
people would always tell me that I should be a lawyer, which I think they just said that because I was a little kid who talked a lot, and I think that especially like
mm,
little girls who talk a lot, people just say, "Oh, you should be a lawyer. You talk too much." Um, but other than that, I think in like freshman year of high school, I did debate,
mm,
and in my first debate tournament was like the best thing that had ever happened to me. I was having so much fun. I felt like I had found something that I was really good at.
Mm,
And because of that, I think that was probably the moment. Like
yeah.
that whole first weekend, it was
Mm,
like a 2-day debate tournament. I was having so much fun. I was like, this is kind of like the thing for me.
yeah. Well, I mean, from my personal observations, you know your audience. So the way you spoke to me during office hours or when you came and visit, um, completely different from when we were well, we were online and you were TAing
Hmm.
and you took over a class discussion
Right.
and you pace yourself. And first of all, those freshmen online, hard to capture their attention. You know,
Right.
probably in other classes they didn't have their cameras on,
Right.
but they were engaged. And um, if you actually look at in terms of etymology, in terms of engagement, they were invested. So they're listening to every word you had to say. That's not usual. So it's not just about talking a lot. You knew what you were saying. You were logical, um, and you drew people in. So take that as a compliment when people say you ought to be a lawyer. It's not because you
Thank
talk a
you.
lot.
Thank you.
Um, now, um, in terms of conflict, or coming across new material that um, goes away, goes against your previous or your current form of thinking, um, how do you solve problems and how do you determine what is true?
I think when it comes to solving problems, I think I'm a person who really separates emotions from logic.
Hmm.
And I think that helps me solve problems because I can take my own feelings out of the equation, which I
Hmm.
don't think is a very common thing. And honestly, I think it can be really valuable
Yeah.
to have your emotions in play when you are problem solving,
Hmm.
just because when it's a conflict between friends or something like that, you need your emotions in that case.
Yeah.
But I also think that like separation lets me make logical decisions without kind of my own motivations coming in the way. I think when it comes to figuring out what the truth is,
Hmm.
I feel like I just have like a code internally that I kind of go by. And I feel like when I look at an issue or a problem, I have an instinct about what I know is
Hmm.
right or
Yeah.
the truth. And I'm not, and it's not, I'm not always right. And I think
Yeah.
being willing to admit you're wrong is something that it's a skill that everyone has to learn, especially in college and just in
Hmm.
general. And there are so many people I know, adults even, who haven't figured out how to admit that they're wrong. So that was definitely something I had to learn because I used to
Hmm.
never be able to admit that I was wrong. And I think finding the truth and admitting that what you believe is not
Yeah.
the truth are kind of two things that go hand in hand.
Yeah. 100%. And it's hard because the personal, it becomes political, right? Um, so now in regards to what's happening in poli sci or um, law, if you have any inkling of what's going on,
Mhm.
how does the future look like in regards to what you've seen at school? I mean, is AI a big issue? Or because I know right now, I don't know if you know too much of it, but right
Mhm.
now there are law schools that are closing because not enough people want to be lawyers,
Right.
you know? So I don't know what that looks like. But also I hear like ChatGPT is quoting court cases that doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
what have you heard in academia where you're at right now?
So, in terms of the academic side of things, um, in university, I would say AI is definitely a problem,
Hmm.
but I've also seen some teachers utilize it. So, it's definitely an issue where people are copy pasting from Chat GPT
Yeah.
um, and submitting. whatever the AI spits out into like their midterms and their finals. Um, and I heard that the school was investing in an AI detection software, but that could have just been a rumor
Mm,
started by the administration because they wanted people to stop
yeah.
relying on generative AI to complete their homework and their exams and stuff. So it's definitely a problem there. I will
Mm,
say a lot of teachers have gotten good at spotting when something someone wrote is written by AI because it's bad or a lot of it is incorrect.
yeah.
And I actually have a professor. I was telling you that there was one class that challenged me this quarter. I have a professor who he will ask AI to write like a brief on a Supreme Court case. And one of our assignments is to write an evaluation on the strengths and weaknesses of that response. So, how good was this response that the AI created? Was the content strong? Was the content weak? And I think that that is so interesting because he's taken this thing that so many professors have written off for good reason.
Hmm.
AI causes problems in academia, but
Right.
he's using it
Yeah.
for an educational purpose, which I think is super cool.
I love that pivot. Actually that's awesome. Because yeah,
It is. Yeah.
um, for yourself, I don't know. I've from the years I've known you, I don't you just been joyful. And whatever you encounter, you know how to adapt, you know how to pivot, and you play the long game. Um, so I've never seen you frustrated. So so let me ask, um, and I don't like using the word failure. How do you handle stumbling blocks when things don't go your way?
Um, Honestly,
Have you encountered anything? Sorry, I just have you up on a
oh,
pedestal.
oh, 100%, 100%. So much, not
Hmm,
getting positions that I wanted,
hmm,
not doing well on an assignment. I mean, it's a little thing, but still affects people.
yeah.
And it happens all the time. I've had my fair share of kind of L's taken,
Hmm,
but honestly, I think that I just move on to the next thing.
hmm.
Once it happens, I don't know what it is. I definitely do get frustrated, especially if it feels unfair. If it
Yeah.
feels
Okay.
fair, I can understand it on some level, but if it feels unfair, whatever the, failure is, then I'm going to be a little bit frustrated about it, but I feel like I just want to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And want to prove myself in another way if that thing
Mm,
didn't work out.
mm,
Um, and maybe I'm just not processing it, so maybe that's unhealthy, but moving on is kind of the way that the path that I take to get over it. I'm just like, okay, let me just move on to the next thing or focus on something else.
yeah. I just think you're discerning. I think you're wise, and I think part of
Thank
it
you.
is not that it doesn't hurt, because I think what hurts
No,
is
100%.
because you're so open-minded and critical and considerate. You probably explored most avenues of trying to figure this out. So when someone comes at you sideways, right? But then you got to pick and choose which battle to fight. Yeah.
100%.
In regards to what you're experiencing in poli sci and whatever exposure you've gotten in for pre-law, what advice would you give to someone wanting to go into that field? Because especially in this area, we have a lot of people just STEM. Um, and
Yeah.
so, and for someone who always wanted to go to law school himself, well, maybe I decided to retire from teaching and go to law school.
Yeah. Yeah. Start studying for the
That's
LSAT.
sad.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for me?
Well, for anyone going into
Mm,
it, I think you really have to want it.
mm,
I think there are a lot of people who, especially from the Bay Area, because Davis is kind of a Bay Area feeder school. So
yeah,
there's so many people from the Bay Area and just California in general who end up at Davis. And that's why I think it's so academically rigorous. And I think there are some people who just went into law because their parents gave them options and STEM, pre-med engineering wasn't something that they wanted to do,
yeah,
or something that they wanted to, they didn't want to go in that direction. They thought their skills fit the legal field better, but I don't think that that can be your only motivation.
Mm, yeah.
You really have to want it. You have to love reading. You have to love writing a lot. I know so many people in my major who want to do pre-law who are like, "No, I just don't really like writing." And I'm thinking to myself, it's all writing from here, like you're not pretty soon you're not going to have any exams. You're just going to be writing. And so you really have to love
Mm,
those things. And I also think you need to have on some level a passion for the law, I
yeah.
think. And you need to find the law interesting. Because if
Mm,
you find the law boring, that's it's not going to work out.
yeah. Because yeah.
However, I
Mhm.
will say that some people think that a lawyer is a very specific kind of person. They think that a lawyer is like type A, super talkative, super outgoing, somebody who's going to be in court all the time, giving statements and questioning witnesses. That's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Um, my second cousin is an attorney. She tried litigation, she tried being a trial lawyer,
Yeah.
and she just found that that wasn't really her personality. She's more laid back.
Hmm.
She's kind of more of an introverted person. And now she's a tax attorney for the government. So there isn't just any one path, I would say. So hopefully that's encouraging. Like you don't have to be a very specific kind of person to be a lawyer, though many lawyers are that specific kind of person.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's definitely options and like
Mhm.
different paths.
Definitely. So before we logged on, one of the questions I had basically was making sure you're having fun, right?
Mhm.
So how do you balance your studies and your personal life?
Question of the year, question of the
Mm,
decade. Um, I honestly, I don't have a concrete answer because
mm,
I feel like I do so much, but I think I have a little bit of everything kind
mm,
of going on. I'm in a sorority, so I think that is kind of something that like forces me to be social and talk to people,
yeah.
which is important, I think, because sometimes after like a long day of studying, all you want to do is nothing, but
Yeah.
it kind of makes me, connect with people,
Yeah.
spend
Yeah. Yeah.
time
Yeah.
with, these girls that I really care about.
Yeah.
Um, Outside of like studying, I don't try to over study. I think there's a certain amount that I study and I don't try to go over that because I don't want to A, burn myself out, and B, there's a point where you're just reading words on a paper and you're not actually studying anymore. And also the kind of academic extracurriculars that I participate in
Mhm.
are kind of social in themselves. I joined my school's mock trial program. And while it's extremely time consuming and it's like hours and hours a week of writing content and being a fake lawyer, and then on the weekends we're like driving to other universities to compete,
Mm,
I still found a lot of important friendships in that activity. So I think, and also in classes I try to make friends as well, so I'm
yeah.
not
Yeah.
going through that all alone. So I think it's about
Mm,
mixing all of those aspects and having a little bit of everything.
mhm. Sorry, you gave me flashbacks when you were talking about where if you keep reading, you're just seeing stuff on a page. It doesn't even process anymore.
No,
No. Oh
no, it
man.
doesn't. Yeah. Yeah. At some point, if you don't know it, you don't know it. So,
And that's a great reminder to see on, especially for undergrad. It's exercise. I mean, of course, you get what you put into it, but it
right.
is just exercise. Um, Things will start. Well, it's just little things that cement and will make you stronger for grad school.
Hmm.
But grad school is where it counts more. But don't
Right.
burn yourself out. And that's another piece of insight that I totally forgot, which is true, which is um, Lord willing, you come into this next stage of life where you're at in academia and your peers, your peers is, I remember coming out of class and some of the lectures, hopefully that's like for you or some of the material, it piques your interest so much and it piques
Mhm.
your your classmates' interest and you're just talking about it even after class,
Right. Yeah.
you know? So the learning is happening in community.
Oh no, 100%. My friends and I sat in the library and just talked through our entire study guide during finals week. And I know people around us were like, what are they talking about? Like, why are they getting so excited about carbon tax? And it's it's good to mix the two for
Mm,
sure.
mm. Yeah, yeah. So just a quick digression. I met up with Mr. Larson this morning and we
Mhm.
just talked about poetry for 2.5 hours. And people, right, in the Silicon Valley coffee shop, like,
Yeah.
you're talking about poetry? Like,
Yeah.
oh, um, what's what's a book that has significantly influenced you? You're a reader. I know it's tough to choose.
I am. I'm thinking about all of the books I read this year because I just had my little wrapped like my reading recording website. I don't use Goodreads. I use this other website called Storygraph and it
Okay.
sends you a little like end of the year recap. Um
Yo.
and so it was telling me all the books that I read. I'm trying to think. I this is not it's not realistic fiction, but it is
Hmm.
based on a true story or it's inspired by a true story.
Okay.
It's this fantasy, like war fantasy trilogy called The Poppy War.
Hmm.
And it's written by this author named R.F. Kuang. And she actually went to Yale
Hmm.
and then Oxford. So she's in academia herself,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I admire her as an author. But the book series is based on the second Sino-Japanese War, and it's very dark. It's a
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah, yeah.
upsetting book to read.
Yeah.
I read the trilogy my senior year of high school.
Hmm.
I think it just taught me a lot about people's motivations and kind of it kind of went into like my worldview of just like political science and war in general and politics and
Hmm.
about what motivates people and how there's a lot of bad but also a lot of good.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
also I think really dark stuff like that kind of just makes you see things differently. But I definitely don't regret reading it. I think
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite book series, and it's just really interesting the way she paints people as being like super nuanced.
Hmm.
And I think it helped me to see that
Hmm.
like
Hmm. Yeah.
people we see every day,
Yeah.
they might outwardly seem hostile towards us and we might not get along with them, but they have everyone has something going on and people
Yeah,
have
yeah,
different
yeah.
motivations and backgrounds that make them the way that they are.
Um, yeah, so I found out a little bit more about my Korean background, and we'll
Mhm.
catch up on another time. But long story short, found out that my ancestors um, were royal advisors to the Korean king up until 1450, but they
Wow.
left because of uh, another king coming in, um, performing a coup and removing the current king, right? And so my ancestor left. Luckily, we weren't executed, but we're just
Right.
banished. Um, but there's so many things at play in regards to that takeover.
Mhm.
Like you said, it's so dynamic. It's not, we try to pigeonhole people into one-dimensional
Exactly.
personas.
Yeah.
Um, and part of the reason, like, all these prime ministers and royal advisors were up against each other, one is the Korean caste system. But
Right.
part of that, it keeping in place, staying in power while at the same time being a vassal state of China and placating towards them,
Right.
you know. Everyone's in fear. And no one chooses, this is fate. No one chooses what family they're born into,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
you know. Um, but yeah, yeah. Once I uncover more stuff, I'll share it with you. But no, like when I looked at that political stance, because used to remember complaining to my mom about how um, it wasn't fair, the racism, being mixed race in Korea and all these other things. But she
Mhm.
already knew. She's like, Robert, in her head, she didn't articulate. But now that I looked at our family background, this is a drop in the bucket. or it's a drop in the ocean compared to what's going on in people's lives and what they're trying to deal with. Um, the poppy board, that sounds intense, super intense.
Yeah.
Um,
Just, be in a chill headspace before you read it because
for
it's pretty
sure,
insane.
for sure. Humanity's insane.
Mhm.
Um, how how do you define success? How do you, for yourself, how do you let go of a project or a paper? How do you know enough is enough?
In terms of defining success, I don't know I don't know how to be a successful person yet, I would say,
Mm,
because I feel like I'm very Bay Area in the way that I'm always trying to pile on more. Like people at my school
yeah,
are just like, why are you doing so much? And I'm like, it if you were from San Jose, you would know. You would know. If you went to my high school, you would know. Um, but I think when I know enough is enough in terms of like a smaller scale thing, like a paper or a test, I think there's a moment when I know that I'm satisfied with it,
yeah,
where I know it can't get any better.
yeah.
I feel like in terms of overall success, hopefully it's when I don't feel like I need to take on anymore.
Mm,
But I also know that I'm a person who likes to do a lot. So I like to be busy. So I don't know if that will ever happen.
mm,
But um, I think as people, we will know when we're successful because we won't feel like we're asking for more
yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah. Um, what do you think are the ethical implications of your future work in law?
A lot of people don't like lawyers for good
Mm,
reason. There are a lot
yeah,
of really bad lawyers,
yeah.
but and I know people always say to me, like, what if you have to defend somebody who killed
Mm,
people?
mm,
Or what if you have to prosecute somebody who's innocent?
yeah.
And obviously, those are important questions to ask. But I think there's a lot of flaws in the justice system in the United States. Hopefully, some that I will get
Yeah,
to see fixed in my lifetime, or hopefully, some that I will get to help fix.
yeah.
But I think that the way that the justice system works kind of has a beauty to it because everybody gets equally defended and
Mm,
prosecuted.
yeah.
Obviously, there are other factors at play like corruption and stuff like that, but the basic premise of it
Hmm.
is, it doesn't matter who you are,
Yeah,
you're getting a legal defense
yeah,
no matter what.
yeah.
And I think it's difficult to explain that, especially to young people,
Mm,
because they're like, well, this person did all of these horrible things. Why would you defend them? The
mm.
fact is, in the eyes of the law,
Yep.
everybody's still human and everybody's going to have a legal defense.
Yeah,
So I think that that is something that's important
yeah,
to consider.
yeah. The law is the law, no matter how undesirable it may be.
Right.
What's a misconception people had about you in high school?
Oh, that's a good one. This one's hard because I don't know what's going on in other people's heads.
Nor do you care?
Do I care? Well, I don't know. But I think at least upon like their first meeting with me, I used to feel like people treated me like I was dumb.
Hmm.
Um, maybe it's I don't know because I'm a girl or
Hmm.
how I look or how I dress or how I present myself, but and that's a huge pet peeve of mine when
Hmm.
people talk down to me as
Hmm.
if I'm um not intelligent.
Yeah.
So I think that that was a misconception, but maybe like a base misconception, maybe
Hmm.
something that people would think or a way that they would act when they first met me.
Hmm.
Hopefully they didn't think that going forward, but who's to say?
How how have you handled criticism or disagreement in college? Like a group project or especially new people you've encountered. What's your workaround?
Well, I think I learned I'm still learning to take criticism.
Mhm.
It's always hard to take criticism. And
Yeah.
I think it always will be for anyone. There's nobody who's gonna, hear criticism about themselves or their work and not be at least a little bit put down by it. Um, but I think because I did acting for so long, I've
Mm,
really gotten good at taking criticism. Because when you're in a production with a director and you're an actor, you're kind of getting criticized on everything you're doing. And it's not just like I feel like with instruments, it's you're getting criticized of how you're playing the instrument. But when
yeah.
you're acting, you're getting criticized on, how you're standing, what your face looks like, when your hair is out of place. So those are definitely, and props to the man who was my director for almost every production I was ever in my
Mhm.
life because he was very good at giving criticism. He was very good at giving it without kind of, hurting people's feelings,
Yeah.
but it's pretty it's a pretty weird experience to be criticized on kind of everything you're doing
Mm,
physically. And because of that, I think it's easier for me to be criticized about the work I'm doing. If I think the criticism is fair, I think I'll be able to take it more easily.
yeah.
But like I was saying before, when I feel like the criticism is maybe unwarranted
Yeah.
or it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make logical sense to
Yeah.
me, then I think it's more difficult to take it. But typically
Yeah.
with criticism, I try to see the logical side of it, and that
Mhm.
helps me kind of adapt to it,
Yeah.
if that
And
makes sense.
yeah. And that's an amazing skill to have because human beings, right? It's very difficult to communicate and their criticisms might be on point in terms of observation, but they don't know how to contextualize it, right?
Right.
Um, and what you've encountered at Davis so far, uh, or even mock trial, what's an idea or concept that excites you right now?
I am really excited. I'm glad you mentioned mock trial because I'm just excited about the future
Mhm.
of my mock trial program. It's such a unique activity. I think anyone who wants to go into the legal
Yeah.
field needs to like try their hand at mock trial because you're in a fake courtroom, you're a fake attorney or a fake witness, and you have a judge
Yeah.
who's sometimes a real judge, sometimes it's an attorney or a law student, and you just do a fake trial
Wow.
about a fake case. And it's the most bizarre but also cool thing ever. Last year's case was a plane crash, so I learned a lot of really interesting technical plane terms.
Mm,
This year's case is a robbery of a bunch of really expensive items and some high valued paintings. And I just think that I'm just excited for what the future of mock trial holds because I get to learn about the law, about rules of evidence. I get to be a fake lawyer. So, and it's really awesome because if I'm good at this, I know that I might be good at being a real lawyer.
yeah.
So it's a really cool thing. And I hope anyone who plans to go into that field gets to at least try it because it's super sick.
You're well versed in a lot. And I think this brings up or builds off the previous question because you were talking about the previous trial having to do with airplanes, right? Um,
Mhm.
we call it the language of the industry. Literally have to learn the diction of whatever field you have to deal with, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you are just ignorant, not in a bad way, just not knowing, right?
Mhm.
What is your approach to learning something new?
I think I like to I like to read things. I like to take every possible resource
Mm,
and look at each of them separately. So for the plane thing, I one of the potential reasons that the plane crashed was that the engine failed.
mm,
So there was a lot of technical engine related terms. So not only did I read the explanations in the case itself, I
mm,
took other approaches like watching videos. Um, I asked a friend of mine who can fly a plane.
mm.
Yeah, the former president of my sorority has her pilot's license. So, um, and then there was this other person that I talked to, kind of people who knew about aviation. And, if I didn't understand then, I would read articles. So it's kind of like taking a bunch of different approaches and hoping that, the combination of everything I've learned from those will help me understand the concept, if that makes
Oh
sense.
yeah, because you try to synthesize as much as possible.
100%.
Because
And
actually, yeah.
yeah,
No,
I
go
feel
go
like
go.
sometimes, oh no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
Mm,
I was just gonna say, I feel like sometimes everyone's a different kind of learner. I feel
mm-hmm.
like for me, it's nice to have all of these different avenues of learning,
Yeah.
reading and listening and getting
Mm-hmm.
visuals.
No, 100%. I mean, that's why I think uh, where discovery and innovation actually happens because you have so many experts, but they're in their own silos and they don't talk to each other
Right.
at all.
Hmm.
But when you do that, you're just like, hold on, people haven't made these connections. People don't.
Right.
What's a question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
A question I wish people would ask themselves more often. I wish people would ask themselves, is what I'm doing, is how I'm trying to get where I'm going
Mm,
having a negative impact on the people around me? I think I know a lot of people who are really driven, which is good.
mm-hmm.
I'm driven. I think
Yeah.
wanting to know where you're going is important. I think people forget that when you're stressed all the time, when
Mm,
you're going through a lot, that affects it can affect the people around you as well.
mm,
People kind of vent to like their friends about what's going on with them without really understanding how that might emotionally impact the friends. I feel like this is something that I'm seeing a lot in college, especially because I think it's because we're all growing up. Everyone is stressed, obviously,
mm, mm,
but I think there's a limit to how much you can vent that stress to
yeah.
the people who are in your close circle
Mm,
without hurting them.
yeah. Yeah. Because people around you, when they listen, they're taking that on too.
100%. Yeah.
You mentioned before, and it's going to come true. You not just witnessing, I would say, being involved with laws that need to be changed. Um, in terms of your work impacting the future, um, what laws are there any laws that you hope become reformed, changed? What do you hope to see in the legal field
I
in the
don't know if
future?
there's any particular piece of legislation that I can name off the top of my head, but I think there's too much corruption
Mm,
in the justice system. And that's one of the things that I want to see reformed. People pay off
mm,
judges. Um, there are so many corrupt judges, so many corrupt lawyers. And I also think that there are a lot of barriers to joining the legal field.
yeah,
Law school is so expensive. The LSAT is expensive, the bar is
yeah.
expensive. And because of that,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have diverse
Hmm.
or as diverse perspectives as there should be in the field.
Yeah.
You know, people, not everyone who wants to go to law school can,
Yeah.
and not everyone who could provide insight
Yeah.
on so many issues in the legal field is able to join the legal field.
Yeah.
There, you know, it can't just be these rich people forever.
Yeah.
And there are so many bad lawyers because of that, actually. You know, people whose parents were really rich, or people whose
Hmm.
parents were huge lawyers, and you know, they paid someone to take the bar for them back in the
Yeah.
80s or something, you know, and that's why there's so many issues. And I just hope that in the future there can be less barriers to becoming a lawyer. Same problem in the medical field, so many
Hmm.
barriers to being a doctor as well. I hope that the costs can be lowered so that people from different backgrounds can become a part of the field.
Yeah. Representation is everything actually. Um,
100%.
um, when the law doesn't look like you, um, yeah, I mean, you can't believe in it. You don't want to,
Exactly. Mhm.
uh, even though it's based off of sound principle. I forgot what state it was, but I remember there was a state where back in the day, where you didn't even need a bar exam. Um, but
Wow.
then when they finally had their first black lawyer, they created the bar exam, or they made it a standard.
Yeah.
And I was listening to this ex CIA field officer, and he was talking about, we talk about developing, quote unquote, developing countries, and the corruption, um, but we have just as much, right?
Right.
And he said the easiest way to look at corruption is nepotism.
Yeah.
Nepotism is a public form of corruption. You just give people a pass, and that's one when a person has a position and they haven't earned it.
Yeah.
That's one seat taken that someone else who is passionate about it, sincere about it, um, to be there, and it's
Yeah.
robbed. Um, what's a dream or goal you're currently working towards?
I really want my mock trial team to go to nationals this year. We have our team kind of, you know, lost a lot of people the year before last year. So
Yeah.
last year was kind of a year to rebuild. This year is another year to rebuild.
Okay.
And I just would really like my team to succeed because it opens so many
Yeah.
doors
Yeah.
for everybody. And it's in Chicago. I would love to go to Chicago and have some fun with my team. And also I just think that it would be such an insanely enriching experience. It would be so educational. That's kind of the thing that I'm focusing the most on right
Hmm.
now at school, I would say. And I just think that to go to nationals would be so awesome. And if not this year, next year.
What does, from your observation, what does your team need to do to get there?
I think everybody on my team needs to be giving 100%, including me, or
Hmm.
honestly, like 120%.
Hmm.
It needs to be everyone's priority because honestly, if you want to really
Mm.
excel at something, it has to be your priority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think that there has to be this team chemistry. And
Yeah.
I think my team definitely has the makings of that chemistry,
Hmm.
but I think we all need to be so much on the same wavelength that it's like we're reading each other's minds. Because that's the thing about a team dynamic, a really, really good team dynamic. Everyone kind of just needs to be almost telepathic with the way
Hmm.
that they're
Yeah.
reading each other's intentions, ideas, bouncing off of each
Hmm.
other to, you know, invent new ideas. I think, you know, cooperation, but on another level.
Definitely, because I mean, you have to figure out how to complement each other, right?
Yeah.
And carry each other.
100%.
When you notice someone is like, "Oh, this person needs to be carried real quick. I need to cover for this person."
Right.
Um, are y'all going to go on like retreats or anything? Like, well, because it sounds like you're naming all these other things, but it's you're 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 intellectually you're capable, right? So it seems just it's the chemistry thing and a priority. So everything else is there.
Yeah. I think everyone has all these, unique
Hmm.
skills. And the chemistry is definitely like we're already all really good friends. I
Okay.
just think we need to be on a level where not only are we all really close, we're also just a really cohesive
Yeah.
team. So, the connection and the collaboration have to be at, the maximum they can possibly be.
Right. So I'll be hoping for it and I'll be looking forward to good news. Last four questions for our audience. What is depression?
I think that it's a hole that you can't get out of. I think it's possible to be depressed without having depression.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yeah.
depressed for a while and you bounce back. But I think depression is definitely a hole. And because of that, I think it's something that you kind of can't get out on your own. You need some sort of help or lifeline, um, or solution. I mean, not that it can be solved, but something to lean on.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I had to describe it in one word, it would be a hole.
Mhm. What is love?
I feel like love is so many things, but I think real love is unconditional. It's unapologetic. You're not embarrassed of it. You're, not in denial of it.
Mhm.
It's, I think it's something that's very real and it's very raw and it hurts a lot sometimes. But it's also supposed to, make you happy no matter what kind of love it is.
Mm.
I think, but I think it should be unconditional and it should be unapologetic.
What is the meaning of life?
I don't think there's any one meaning. I think every individual person has to give their life meaning.
Mm.
For a lot of people, that meaning is God. But there are also a lot of people who don't believe in God. And for those people, maybe the meaning of life is their family
Mm.
or, their significant other or a hobby that they really love or their career. But I think everyone has to give their own life meaning in some way.
I like how you use that verb give, because a lot of people are waiting for it.
Hmm.
Um, all right, last but not least, what advice would you give to young people, especially high schoolers and maybe high school seniors?
Trust in your own ability and your own intelligence and your own brain. I always tell myself, you know, when I'm struggling through a paper or something, I'm just like, you're competent. You can accomplish this. In an hour and a half, you'll be done with this. So,
Mm.
you have the ability to get to point B. You just need to make your brain do it. Um, don't doubt what you can do. Don't let people tell you that your opinions don't matter just
Mm.
because you're young or because of the way you look or, because of what gender you are. Like don't let anybody tell you that your opinions don't matter because they do. And a lot of times if you want to be heard, you really have to make yourself heard. And that is kind of the unfortunate reality. I would love if everyone was able to listen to each other, but unfortunately, that's not the case. If you have a goal, you can accomplish it if you just, trust in your own competence and intelligence. And also find friends who lift you up. We're not in high school anymore. Once you get to college, you don't have to please people just, for social reasons. You get to pick and choose who you keep in your
Mm,
life. It's not like
mm,
high school where you see somebody every day and you need to be friends with them, even if they're
mm,
bad for you.
mm,
You're going to be an adult. You don't need to keep someone in your life if they're not good for you. Surround yourself with people who are going to help you, and hopefully you're able to help them, and make good decisions about the company you're keeping. Um and yeah, just trust yourself. Trust your instinct. Your instinct is probably right.
I mean, wow. Yeah, find friends that celebrate your wins, that don't knock you down, get jealous of you. Um,
100%.
um, Thank you so much for the affirmation. I'm just listening, I'm smiling ear to ear because I don't know, you're selling me on law school.
Really? That's
I'm
great.
like, man, I think the same way. Maybe I need to be a lawyer. Um,
Yeah.
Siona, thank you so much. I knew it when when I had when I asked you to come on. I was like, oh, I hope she comes on because
Yeah.
again, your cadence, bars. Do you speak in iambic pentameter? Because I don't know, because it's music. You
Yeah, it's
drop
all
bars.
the Shakespeare plays I've done in my life. That's what it is.
Well, Siona, thank you so much for being on. We
Thank you for
appreciate
having me.
you. Thank you so much for your insight, and we look forward to probably bringing you on and hearing good news about mock trial in nationals.
Great. Well, I'll let you know. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Siona.